The story begins with an alien hurtling toward Earth, crashing through the atmosphere with tremendous force. Deep in the forest, a hunter resets his trap after it snaps on a deer. As he frees the creature, the ground trembles violently. The alien has landed. The air shifts, carrying an unfamiliar energy. Instinctively, the hunter senses something unnatural. Within seconds, he drives toward the disturbance. When he arrives, unease grips him. His dog moves ahead to investigate but soon returns wounded and terrified. Alarmed, the hunter raises his gun, finger trembling on the trigger. At dawn, Renee is outside burning her dead lizard pet. When she steps inside, her mother Linda waits in the living room. In the kitchen, Linda's boyfriend confronts Renee about her attitude. Moments later, Renee leaves for school. On the way, she notices a strange symbol etched on her stepdad's car and scratches it off with a nail. She didn't really fit in her class, and other students made fun of her any chance they get. During lunch, Renee sat with a boy named Gil, who tried engaging her in a conversation, but she was not having it. After lectures, she calls her mother for a pickup, and Linda arrives almost instantly. As Renee enters the car, her classmates continue laughing at her from across the road. Inside, mother and daughter talk about Linda's boyfriend, whose drunken habits clearly bother Renee. Later that evening, Renee returns home with food meant for their pet snake. She spends a few minutes entertaining it with a song. That night at dinner, Linda's boyfriend mentions finding a dead mouse inside the microwave, accusing Renee of being responsible. She insists she used the oven, not the microwave. Already drunk, he throws chips at her in irritation. Furious, Renee storms out, climbs into an automobile, and drives to an isolated spot to clear her head. As she sits alone in silence, she spots something chained to a truck, the same alien that crashed days earlier. When it stirs violently, she panics and starts her automobile, but before she flees, she notices green blood dripping from its wound. Seeing that the creature has calmed, she cautiously approaches and loosens the chain before speeding away. Back home, she finds her mother sitting quietly in the living room, unaware of what just happened. The next morning, helicopters thunder overhead, search teams scouring for the alien. Determined to find and protect it before the government does, Renee scribbles a list of tools she'll need to confront the alien. She later meets Gil, asking to borrow his camera. He refuses until she offers an English essay he values. With the trade complete, Renee returns home with the camera. Inside, her parents wait. They hand a chip that shows Chase has got a job and is now trying to be responsible. Chase, clearly exhausted, mutters something about an early dinner before retreating to his room. Still bitter over the previous night, Renee wishes he would apologize. Later, she reviews her notes, striking out any tools she already has. Sneaking quietly into his room, she takes his car keys and steps outside, searching the vehicle for more supplies, which she eventually found after a while of searching. Packing her equipment into the automobile, she drives to the crash site and scans the area through the camera lens. Nothing appears at first, but after spotting a trail of green blood, she moves closer. There, she finds the alien again. Testing the gun, she begins recording herself preparing to free it. But as she moves toward the chain, everything falls silent. Turning back for another tool, she's suddenly pinned to the ground. The alien leaps on her, salivating across her face. Moments later, she breaks free. Instead of attacking, the creature seems curious. Slowly, a fragile trust forms between them. That night, Renee returns home, but her gun is missing. When she goes to investigate, she encounters Linda's boyfriend, who questions her about the missing key and begs her not to tell Linda he's been drinking again. Stepping outside, Renee freezes. Standing before her is the alien. It had followed her home. Shock turns to concern as she warns it that if her mother saw it, she'd likely hand it over to the authorities. In a blink, the alien vanishes. Then, it reappears behind her, pressing a glowing hand to her chest. Their minds connect in an energy surge, an unspoken bond linking them both. When Renee regains consciousness, she realizes they can now understand one another. She leads it into a hidden underground room beneath the house. Meanwhile, authorities continue investigating the forest crash site. Renee calls her mother, watching her from afar, to make sure she'll be home late, enough time to avoid discovery. Later, in the basement, Renee spends time with the alien, learning that it rejects normal food. Back at school, her teacher notices her absence. Instead, Renee stays home, letting Graham the pet interact with the alien. When the creature grows restless, she calms it with music and assures it of safety. Then an alarm rings, her mother's car pulling up outside. In a rush, Renee hides the alien in the room below. Gil soon arrives at her house to retrieve his camera. Renee, serving water to the alien, steps out to face her mother, who immediately questions why she skipped school. When Renee returns to her room, she catches Gil holding the camera. Demanding it back, she realizes the videotape is missing. They struggle briefly until her mother bursts in, forcing them to stop. Once Linda leaves, Gil insists on knowing what's going on. To silence his questions, Renee leads him to the underground room. Inside, the alien reacts violently at Gil's presence. The boy panics as the creature sniffs him and he faints. When he finally wakes, he tries to leave, but Renee convinces him to stay, showing how the alien calms whenever she sings. Seeing this, Gil softens. As they leave the basement, Renee begs him not to tell anyone. Elsewhere, government agents continue their investigation. At sunset, Renee grows lonely and returns to the basement. She plays the piano and sings for the alien, strengthening their bond. The next day, she meets Gil again, and he suggests they travel to the desert that night, insisting he has an idea that'll make the alien eat. Renee warns him that search teams are already scouring the area. He then proposes they head to the southern desert instead, a place untouched by the hunt, and perhaps their only chance to keep the alien safe. Later that night, the desert whispered under a dim moonlight as Renee quietly met Gil at the secret site, the same place where they had hidden the alien, now known as Croak. The creature was sent out to hunt for food, giving them a few rare moments alone. As they talked, the air between them softened, two troubled souls, bound by secrets. Ronnie confessed that her father was gone, and that's why her mother had moved them to this forsaken zone. Just then, Croak returned, its long limbs glistening under the pale light, holding a chunk of meat it had hunted. It tried to share it with Renee, but she gently refused, unsettled by the gesture. Their eyes met, human and alien, and for a fleeting moment she felt pity and something else. Gil moved closer, almost wrapping her in an embrace, when Croak suddenly let out a deep, guttural roar that echoed through the night. The sound wasn't anger, it was warning. Gil froze, fear creeping into his face, and without a word he ran off. Renee stood there trembling, but when the dust settled, she found Croak staring back at her, lost, restless, and scared. Against all logic, she took it home. The house was silent, until a voice broke through the dark. Her stepfather. He grabbed her arm roughly, accusing her of stealing his gun and sneaking out. His words sliced through her like knives. As he raged, Renee's fear triggered something far away. Croak began thrashing, its body trembling in sync with hers. They were connected. When she tried to escape, he slammed her against the wall, his rage turning monstrous. But before he could hurt her further, Linda, her mother, burst in, screaming for him to stop. The entire house shook violently as the alien sensed Renee's terror. Glass cracked, walls rattled, and the stepfather stumbled back in confusion. Linda, furious, kicked him out of the house. But the damage was done. Renee, trembling with both anger and pain, ignored her mother's pleas. She stormed out, tears burning her cheeks, disappearing into the basement, where Croak waited. As soon as she arrived, the creature calmed down, its breathing steadying. The night passed in uneasy silence, and she slept beside the being she once feared. When dawn broke, Renee tried to go about her day, but peace never lasts long. On her way to school, she was stopped by an FBI agent named Jonathan. He asked her a few questions about her family, subtly hinting at her mother's boyfriend. She answered with cold honesty, "He's not my father." Before leaving, Jonathan handed her his card, his tone calm but suspicious. Meanwhile, back at home, Linda had called a plumber to fix a water issue. The man whistled as he entered the basement, until he dropped his tools, frozen in terror. A monstrous hiss filled the space. Moments later, he was seen speeding away in his van, his hands bleeding, his eyes wide with shock. He didn't see the car until it was too late. At school, Renee stared at the officer's card, her heart heavy with dread. That evening, as she stepped off the school bus, she passed the accident scene, the plumber's van, smashed beyond repair. Then Linda appeared, her face pale, and silently took her home. In the car, the tension snapped. Renee lashed out, blaming her mother for everything, for moving, for her father's death, for the life they were now living. Linda's hands tightened on the wheel. Tears welled up. She stopped the car, unable to take it anymore, and stepped out, leaving Renee alone. Fueled by anger and guilt, Renee rushed to the basement and froze. Drops of blood led her to Croak, whose body shimmered with greenish fluid. It was hurt. Without hesitation, she cleaned its wounds, whispering softly that they would soon leave before anyone else got hurt. Days later, under the blazing desert sun, Renee and Croak walked across the sand dunes, trying to find a way out. Her phone rang. It was Gil. He begged her to meet him at their old spot. She agreed, her voice low and tired. Riding her bike, she arrived first and hid Croak beneath a rock formation. When Gil showed up, his eyes were anxious. He confessed that someone had threatened him, that they knew about the creature. Renee, in return, opened up about her father's death, the pain that had never left her. That night, she returned home quietly, wrote a letter to her mother, and left it on the bed. Before leaving, she set her pets free, a silent goodbye. But just as she tried to start the car, her stepfather appeared again, dragging her toward the house. At the same time, government agents and police were closing in on the desert, searching for Croak. Linda saw the chaos unfold and yelled for Renee to run, just before her boyfriend struck her to the ground. In the distance, Croak sensed the danger. It charged across the desert like a storm. As Renee tried to escape, her stepfather raised his gun, about to fire, until Croak appeared from behind and devoured him whole. Renee screamed for it to stop, but the creature vanished into the sand. Moments later, Gil showed up, urging her to give up the alien. "I told them," he confessed. "They're coming." The betrayal hit her harder than anything before. Government agents surrounded her. Jonathan appeared, his eyes cold. As she tried to run, he shot at the bike beside her, forcing her still. She was captured, restrained with wires and machines probing her head. The monitors flickered, and the officers discovered what she feared most. She was psychically linked to Croak. To lure the creature out, they began hurting her, shocks, screams, pain. And it worked. Croak roared from miles away and charged toward her, breaking through barriers and bullets until it found her. But before it could save her, it was trapped in an energy field. Renee cried helplessly as they sedated her and dragged the alien away. When she awoke, she was locked in a small, sterile room. Her mother, desperate, searched for her until she was caught. Jonathan told Linda coldly, "It's against the law to harbor a dangerous extraterrestrial being." She spat in his face. Later, a man named Brown whispered something to Jonathan, an order. They dragged Linda away despite her pleas, but before leaving she pulled out Renee's letter and whispered, "You were right about everything." Meanwhile, Renee, broken and cornered, tried to harm herself, knowing the pain would reach Croak. Jonathan and Brown rushed in to stop her. In the struggle, she bit Jonathan's arm. Alarms blared. Lights flickered. Croak had escaped. The facility descended into chaos. Soldiers ran, sirens screamed, and then, silence. Croak appeared, glowing in the dark, eyes burning with fury. Jonathan and Brown raised their guns, but in an instant, Croak threw them aside like ragdolls. Renee begged it not to kill them. Trembling, she took the exit key from Jonathan's belt and ran outside with Croak close behind. They reached the car, ducking under it as gunfire ripped through the air. Jonathan emerged, bleeding but relentless, firing until his clip was empty. Croak lunged to protect Renee, but the final bullet struck deep. The alien stumbled, then impaled Jonathan with one swift move before collapsing. Renee screamed, running to its side. Tears streamed down her face as Linda appeared, rushing to embrace her daughter. They held each other tightly as the sun rose over the desert, mother, daughter, and the faint shadow of what they had lost. Later, we see Renee at home, her fingers dancing across the piano keys, a soft melody echoing through the quiet. Somewhere far away, inside a dim laboratory, Croak was trapped in a containment chamber, growling weakly as scientists surrounded it. The screen fades to black. The connection between them, not broken, merely silent. That's how it all ended. Stay tuned for more gripping, emotional, and cinematic stories like this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because every story has a pulse, and some never die.